Greetings. This is General CJG here, coming to you with another video for State of Star Wars, another podcast. This one, well, it's one to hold our audience together for a bit while we work on the next defending prequels video, which is going to be Attack of the Clones, obviously. So, meanwhile, we're going to be doing this one as some sort of an episode 1 tie-in of sorts. And it's one of the more popular expanded universe materials around. This one is the Darth Plagueis book. Yep, we're going to be discussing this book in a good amount of detail. From its story, its characters, a lot of stuff. So, joining me here are...
Captain Ensign, happy to be here as always.
This is the Spider-Fan Maniac.
Yep. And so we're going to start right away. So we start first with what the book is about. So the simplest way to describe it is, well, the title says it, it's about Darth Plagueis. It's almost everything you can think of about who Darth Plagueis is and what he did before his eventual demise at the hands of Palpatine, as he described in episode 3. So it's pretty much everything from his apprenticeship under his master, Darth Tenebrous, to how he later was putting the seeds for the big Sith plan and even executing it behind the scenes under his alter ego, Hugo the Mask, to then finding Palpatine and becoming a Sith apprentice, so on and so forth. So many things. We'll go in order on each one, or at least mention the ones that we like to discuss. It's going to be a bit more... not as structured as with previous podcasts, where actually it was a lot more structured. We had to go more in detail. This one is more just in-depth discussion on anything we want to talk about this book. So let's go. So who wants to say the first thing to discuss?
So basically, the book begins with Plagueis, and Tenebrous and Plagueis decides to go on a mining survey, and then they notice that the droids malfunctioned, which resulted in Tenebrous' death, but technically not really, because Plagueis could have saved Tenebrous, but intentionally abandons him, right?
Yeah, he apparently threw some sort of debris in his face and left him to die, and Plagueis just basically escaped.
Now, this story is not really focused on Tenebrous. If you want the full view of Tenebrous, there is another story. Which I wonder if you guys actually read the Tenebrous Way short story.
Heard of it, but not read it.
Yeah.
So basically, put it simply, after Plagueis escaped from leaving Tenebrous to die, well, he stowed away in a ship known as the Would Be Gone. And, well, apparently the crew discovered that they had a stowaway, aka Plagueis. Plagueis killed him. He took the 11-4D droid as an assistant in his experiments on midichlorians, and then he returned to his homeworld on Miralisk as Hugo the Mask.
Now, the interesting thing about this book is we get to know more about the Munes. Now, the closest thing we could actually know about the Munes, to be honest, was the Clone Wars micro series. And I mean, the buildings and the bunch of Munes and clones and droids shooting lasers is fun and all, but we don't get to see much of it.
Much of their dealings in the intergalactic banking clan, you know, I guess the economic and political parts of them.
Yeah, I would say everything you would ever want to know about the moon civilization and culture is found here.
And actually, there's something interesting about it, which one of Hugo Demas's partner is called Lars Hill, which you guys will know Sand Hill's father in the prequel trilogy.
Yes. I assume this
So,
guy is
as you can see, this book, as you further read on, major players in the galaxy that's going to have an impact. Most of them appear in this book in certain form, starting from Jabba the Hutt, Palpatine, or Grievous. Even Jango Fett and Grievous gets mentioned at some point in some kind of way.
You know, Gardula the Hutt's also there, setting up the eventual, pod racing circuit on Tatooine.
Oh, yes, definitely. There's a lot of things that happen in this book.
So what was it? Chairman Tonnet, was it? Which Demas didn't have a really good relationship with. What was that? Chairman Tonnet. Which I assume Chairman Tonnet is is a relative of Porth Tonnet.
Possibly.
I mean, I wonder if you know who Porth Tonnet is, because
I actually that name eludes me.
Porth Tonnet is the main CIA commander who fought against Anakin and his forces in Jedi trial.
Oh, I see.
He was also immune.
I see. That explains it. Yeah, because I haven't read Jedi Trial yet, so that's why I didn't know. Interesting. Okay, so yeah, this book features something interesting regarding Jabba the Hutt. He at one point has a meeting with Plagueis. He got the mask, and this was the first that when I first read it, I was like blown away by actually hearing Jabba the Hutt talk in Basic. Like I never expected that one. Like this was before I read a lot more of the Hispanic Universe. Like the first time I read it, I was like blown away. Like,
I mean, there is a scene where Jabba the Hutt is like trying to talk to Huttese to Plagueis, and Plagueis like speak Basic.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to hear that crap.
Not many tell that to Jabba the Hutt.
And live with it.
Yeah.
I mean, this already shows how much Plagueis is important, and even the criminals like Jabba and Gardula, and many could not mess with him and get away with it.
Yes, indeed. And that's besides the fact they don't even know that he's a Sith. So, yeah. Like that is something.
Yeah, this book very much emphasizes that at this point, and we see it further developed as we get into get into episode 1 proper, the various organizations, the banking clan, trade federation, are getting more and more of a hold throughout the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's thanks to the banking clan through Damask Holdings that Naboo enters into the Republic sphere.
Which
later on.
was it? The information was learned sent it by the subtext mining, I remember, because Plagueis was like, Plagueis was about to kill them if they were not gonna give any useful information.
Yes.
And then they were like, okay, we got some interesting news, Magister. So there's a planet called Naboo, which has a lot of plasma.
Speaking of that mining company, they were the ones that supplied the faulty droid that led to Tenebrous dying and Plagueis managing to kill him. So, yeah, that's the reason why Plagueis was going to kill them. So think about that. If they didn't give something useful, Plagueis would have killed them. So there you go, plasma.
Yeah, we have this really interesting idea where throughout the book we have Plagueis talk about how the rule of 2 was flawed and it wasn't really going to last. And here we actually see that. We have a situation where Tenebrous is injured and dying, and Plagueis doesn't do anything to save him, thus becoming the master not through actually being a better Sith, but by just happenstance. Essentially, Plagueis wasn't ready to be a master. And through that action, we see how it leads to, how Palpatine ends up killing him. So we see that because of these actions, the Bane line of the Sith essentially caused its own downfall, because the last few Sith of the line became masters before they were actually ready.
Yeah, and we kind of see it. Maul, I mean, Palpatine would have think he was kind of successful at some point, but that was quickly reconsidered because there's either he was dead, or if we follow the current version, which is kind of cringe, but Rule of 2, blah, blah, blah. And Dooku, he was just a pawn. And Vader. Palpatine did not have the intention to ever teach his full knowledge to Vader. So, I mean, he was falling apart.
Yeah, it was.
And not to mention with Plagueis, and this would later be repeated with Palpatine, though actually successful to a point. Plagueis figured that he would be the last member of the Bane line of Sith when he would discover the ability to cheat death, he would be able to, rule the galaxy forever. But obviously that fails and goes to Palpatine, who did learn essence transfer, which Plagueis tries to do throughout this book. But of course, Palpatine is the one who ends up finding out how. And
actually, Henson Plagueis was trying to search for another way to watch out. He actually wanted to use the midichlorians to manipulate him in some way so that he could basically survive. He didn't want it to transfer from body to body or to something else. He wanted to preserve his own body forever. That's what he wanted.
Right. Yeah,
the way it is written is kind of funny because there's like two ways Plagueis possibly considered for his everlasting life, and one was putting himself in a clone body, and the other was through being a Force ghost. And it was like Plagueis is describing like he didn't want to be a lingering presence where he could only function as someone who controls lesser beings, which just seems like a direct jab at Force ghosts. And the put himself in a clone body, we know what this reference is.
Yes, we
and
know.
I'm not sure if this intention was jabbing at Dark Empire or just referencing it.
I think it's more referencing it. I don't think it was a
I mean, given that this book does do a lot to set up those events, I would say it's more so just referencing rather than making a jab at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it makes you wonder, because a lot of EU writers do some stupid stuff to make jab at Dark Empire, so it is.
Yeah, but we'll get into more detail regarding Dark Empire and other EU references much later on. We're more discussing how the book itself. So now, speaking of Plagueis looking for immortality, I think we should get into another big point of this book: Plagueis and his experiments with midichlorians.
Speaking of his immortality, at some point in the book, it's mentioned that Darth Bane was actually managed to find the. Okay, this is another reference, but at this point, it's kind of unavoidable to mention sources because referencing sources are part of the story. So it mentions that Plagueis read about how Darth Bane found the holocron of Darth Andedu, but at some point, that holocron went missing. It eventually reappears later in the timeline, but Plagueis also attempts to, but it fails. And he also says that he's not good at sorcery because he's not talented for it.
He prefers science over sorcery or alchemy or other shit. But he does do experiments.
Yeah. So. And this is where Venomous in the future appears. Like,
oh, yes.
Does anyone remember Venomous?
Yeah, apparently Darth Venomous or Venomous, I don't know how it's pronounced. Apparently he was a second Sith apprentice to Darth Tenebrous, another Biff.
And in case you don't recognize my pronunciation of characters, it is because I'm using the same pronunciation as the audiobook. Go figure.
Okay. So yeah. Darth Venomous, apparently he showed up, and he was basically like a plan B in case Plagueis failed to meet the Tenebrous' expectations of becoming the next successor, the next Sith Master. But, well, Plagueis apparently, he defeated Venomous, and, well, he pretty much poisons the Sith and starts doing all sorts of experiments on him in manipulating midichlorians. And that's where it gets crazy in regards to the experimentation of Venomous.
Yeah, which is Venomous is the direct reference where Palpatine saying keep people from dying in Revenge the Sith.
It could be, considering that what Plagueis does to Venomous, he manipulates the midichlorians and makes it so that he actually found a way to kill the body, then bring it back to life, then doing it several times until the body eventually gave up and just died for good. Which, That's something. So I guess Plagueis was getting there somewhere. It's just that, of course, as we know, he was unable to achieve that secret because Palpatine decided to kill him.
I mean, and at some point in the book, when Plagueis meets Venom, it's just like, you must be another artificial construction made by Tenebrous. And I was like, no. Where did that came from? I mean,
we know that he was experimented on or something by Tenebrous. Something about bits. Something about bits science, but I can't remember what exactly it was.
I think the Tenebrous way explains that a bit in regards to what Tenebrous was experimenting, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't know much about that either. So there's that. But yeah, regards to Plagueis experiments, like, okay, one thing to keep in mind: this book talks in detail about the midichlorians, which not many sources do that in Star Wars. So this is definitely one of those outliers that actually do it.
Yeah,
I think not only that, but it's one of the major focuses of the book.
I mean, we talked about the midichlorians in the Phantom Menace podcast, but it is crucial to know that the midichlorians are not the Force. The book reinforces this by saying midichlorians are not Force-carrying particles. Instead, it is interlocutors, which allows the individuals to communicate with the midichlorians. I mean, the book, which is kind of annoying if you have to deal with a lot of people who don't understand what midichlorians is, but we'll get further on that.
Yeah, indeed. So, but yes, so this book talks about midichlorians. Here's something interesting. So the Jedi, they think that the midichlorians are symbionts, but to Plagueis, the midichlorians are more like interlopers, running interference for the Force and standing in the way of a being's ability to contact the Force directly, which is interesting with how Plagueis perceives midichlorians. And then the book says that while midichlorians appear to resist manipulation of a sort that might imperil the balance of the Force, they remain passive, even compliant, in the case of a weak-willed being manipulated by one who was strong in the Force.
And the Plagueis even has a quote on the book saying, to say that the Force works in mysterious ways is to admit one's ignorance, because any mystery can eventually be solved.
Well,
which would have been nice if it was actually in the movie, but too bad.
Yeah, well, this book came out like what, 7 years. Well, it came. Well, if we go with the Phantom Menace, it's basically like 13 years later. But if we go with Episode 3, it's 7 years later. So, yeah, there is that. So, anything else to mention on how midichlorians are talked about in this book? Because there's plenty.
Maybe later, because I can't think of it now.
Okay. Okay. Henson, got something on midichlorians?
Just that it's explained, or at least I think Plagueis theorizes why certain species are able to not be affected by, say, Force persuasion, having to do with evolution. Though it's not really explained why certain species evolved to, be able to resist the effects of, something like Force persuasion, but the idea is brought up. And the point is, Plagueis does a lot with trying to figure out what the hell the midichlorians can do and what they're just how far he can go with his experiments.
Speaking of that, now I do remember. At some point, it was mentioned creatures like the Orbalisks and even the Ysalamari, right? Mm-hmm. The creatures Thrawn use. Which the common misconception people seem to have is these creatures are inherently Force. They don't exist within the Force, which isn't true because they do exist in the Force, but they have some kind of a bubble inside their cells. I might be confusing, but which protects them from Force attacks or anything because they naturally have less midichlorians. I mean, this is later reference to the Yanchori species, right?
Yeah, it mentions the Jinchori species, Yusalamiri, among other species that apparently have some sort of immunity to aspects of the Force. So there is that. There is even what regarding the Jinchuri. So apparently the Jinchuri's immunity to the Force, suggestion, and immunity the species shared with Huts, Toydarans, and others had provided them with a new line of investigation. Unlike Yusalamiri, which created a Force bubble in the presence of danger, the Jinchuri were in a perpetual state of involuntary immunity to Force suggestion. The fact that immunity was in a sense hardwired into them meant that the ability was an adaptation prompted by a past threat to the survival of the species. This means that the Jinchuri's midichlorians had evolved to provide protection to a species that was naturally strong in the Force.
And speaking of the Inchori, we can see that the Inchori doesn't like the fact that they're not represented well in the Republic, and it is also, at some point, the events they do rise up against. Now, if you want to know more about how the Inchori fights against the Jedi, this is not the book you should be looking for. It's Jedi Council Acts of War.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, anything else to mention on Plagueis' experiments?
And no.
No.
Okay, well now I guess we get to the next big part of the Plagueis book, which is Plagueis meeting Palpatine. Oh yeah. Oh,
First and foremost, we don't know his first name, and it's acknowledged in this book why we don't.
It's
Get
heavily,
lost, sheep.
It's heavily alluded by the book that the name is the same one as the father of Palpatine, Kosinga Palpatine, but it's never like explicitly said, oh yeah, that's his name. It's like just heavily alluded because Palpatine says that his name is the first one of his father, but he doesn't want to use it whatsoever because he hates him so much.
So basically, Palpatine respects the family bloodline he was born into, but he didn't like the current people he had to live with.
Yes, exactly.
And so was it. Plasma was the reason, right?
Yeah.
Plagueis decided to.
Yeah, that's where the Damask Holdings' initial interest in Naboo started.
And we get to see the now young Ars Baruna, who become the, okay, not young, but younger future King Baruna.
Yep. We also get to see Palpatine himself, young.
And no Padme because she's not alive.
Yeah,
or,
she's not.
Wait, is she? Yeah, she's not.
No, I don't think she's alive.
I know we already knew this thanks to Dark Empire, but I'll just say it here because look, Palpatine's a redhead, so that automatically makes him the best character in the book.
Well, that's something. But something about Palpatine. So he hates his father, and in some ways he ended up helping Higgle the Mask as well as the Mask Holdings to basically learn all sorts of political information regarding Naboo. Almost kind of like being let's just say Higgle the Mask's spy, to say the least. Which
I mean, not really a spy because people seem to know he's doing that. It's not like his father didn't know or his mentors didn't know he was doing it.
Well, okay.
Well, they don't act upon it until later.
Yeah. Well, in that case, maybe not spy, just I guess information.
Informant.
Yeah, informant.
And we could. I mean, this is one of the few books we actually get to know about Palpatine's life in depth. And when Palpatine was young, he seems to have some certain psychopathic tendencies. He at some point ran over some pedestrians in his speeder, which his father had to basically pay monies to the official to cover it up and act like it never happened.
Well, that's something. So Plagueis, Palpatine, they meet. They're basically like talking. Plagueis suspects that the kid is something interesting, and he also suspects that maybe he's strong in the Force, but he hasn't like seen it. But he's like waiting for a moment in which he finds it out, and then at one point when both of them are talking, that's where Plagueis he does in a sort of way sense it a little bit, and then Plagueis decided to And well, not inadvertently, but more like indirectly make it so that Palpatine confronts his family because his family wanted to basically take Palpatine to some other planet as far away as possible from Plagueis and from even the family. And what did Palpatine do after that? Well,
He
Kill
basically killed them.
everyone.
Yeah. And what the story was actually interesting for Plagueis is because Plagueis wasn't the legitimate son. Okay, he was the son of a second wife,
There was a name to it, but I don't remember what it was.
which is interesting because Plagueis is not the first Higo Damask. It's Higo Damask the second, which Higo Damask the first must be his grandfather, right?
Possibly. So,
And if we look at Plagueis' history before convincing Palpatine to do what is right, he says like his family, his clan family, his biological sisters and his clan mother didn't like him because they consider him an outsider because he had a different mother, and they had no intention to share any money after the clan father died. But they somehow discovered that they had an illness and they found the doctor to solve it, but the doctor was actually revealed to be hired by Damask himself, and then the doctor basically kills them all, making Plagueis the sole inheritor of the Damask family's money.
It should also be noted that Hugo Damask was born and grew up on Megiddo, and if I remember correctly, Megiddo started to become something worthwhile because of the mask holdings.
Megiddo. Let me get this. Megiddo is a plane where the Galactic Marines were there, right?
I think so, yeah. Now I want to talk about how apparently Palpatine literally utilized the entire dark side of the Force to kill his entire freaking family. And Plagueis planned that shit all along.
I mean, the way Palpatine killed his family reminds me of Darth Bane killing his father subconsciously.
Kinda, but Palpatine not only did it with knowing full well what was happening, he just released the entire power of the dark side on them. Like, it didn't hold back a bit.
And then after this, Plagueis is like saying that we'll be meeting soon, and then what was it? At least a week passed before they actually talked again, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they
And
talk.
Palpatine's like, "You told me we're gonna meet soon," and then Plagueis is like, "Hey man, it's not my fault you killed your family. Do I have to abandon my business to take care of you?" He's not wrong.
Not to mention, Palpatine is surprisingly in shock about what happened. Not regretful, but in shock.
And then he got more in shock when he was talking face to face with Plagueis, and Plagueis pretty much revealed that he is a Sith Lord, and that's where he took Palpatine under his wing, and even gave him his Sith name, Darth Sidious.
Idiots.
Yep. Reason why is because as Plagueis.
Insidious.
Well, here's why. Darth Plagueis described Palpatine as heartless, ambitious, arrogant, insidious, and without shame or empathy, as well as a murderer.
Makes me still wonder what the hell Vader means, but okay.
It means invader, actually. Somebody invading somewhere. And Anakin and Darth Vader have done plenty of invading in all sorts of Star Wars media, so no surprise.
Like Plagueis would be plague. No idea what Tenebrous is, though.
It seems like these Sith Lords have something in common. It's like having a unstable family. Like, just look at it. Bane, abused by his father. Plagueis had his clan family try to kill him. Sidious kills his mother, brother, and father. Like, this seems... And Zana had a interesting relationship. I'm not gonna get with his annoying brother Darabit, but let's not get into that.
They already had a
mention many of them are born with what would be psychopathic or sociopathic tendencies, because when Plagueis goes through his childhood, he makes a note that when his mother, gave him playmates, he didn't see them as playmates, he saw them as playthings. So he always viewed himself as superior to others. Same as said for Palpatine.
His childhood is also interesting in a way because it explains that there were instances where Plagueis like convinced to another child when he was trying to go too fast. If you are such in a hurry, why not just jump out of the window?
And he does.
Yeah, and then another relationship Plagueis manipulated is basically when a child is trying to get too close to him, he intentionally does something bad to make them stay away from him. Like he basically knows basic psychology and he shares his information with his mother and father. Now we all know why they're doing this because they're under the orders of Rouge's Gnome, and Plagueis' father is trying to get to a high position of banking clan.
Yes, indeed. And then after Plagueis gives Palpatine his name and everything, he puts him in training for 11 years, apparently. And then Palpatine, because he was the last family member of the House of Palpatine, he quickly climbs his way up the political ladder of Naboo to become its ambassador throughout the galaxy. And, well, he also gets help of new friends, Kin Mandoriana and Sate Pestage.
And yeah, which Kim Mandoriana. Wait, Kim Mandor. Isn't that the guy from one of Sean's books? I don't remember.
He was first mentioned in Vision of the Future, then Cloak of Deception. That's where he made his first appearance. So he actually is more of a Cloak of Deception character. So basically, Cloak of Deception goes more in detail.
And Sate Pastage is one of those purple dudes in Episode 6.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
And at one point, we also get to see a younger Tarkin, so...
I mean, both Tarkins appear. And when I say both, some people might be confused. One is Ranulph Tarkin, the guy who fought in the Hyperspace War, and Wilhelm Tarkin, the guy who's charged of Death Star. People need to know the difference.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So essentially, we have a whole segment of the book where Palpatine is just, gaining influence, making quote-unquote friends in the political spectrum, for use later on down the line.
And they actually do, because you get to see many of these people in the future. For example, Kim Mandoriana. He has a very, very big role in Outbound Flight. Wilhelm Tarkin. Tarkin is mentioned here. Tarkin appears later in the original trilogy, and many others.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. So there is that.
And while that is going on, Plagueis meets up with the Kaminoans
yes.
to discuss cloning.
Which you also get to meet important people who are also there. One of the scientists is called Kosai, which her existence becomes extremely important in the Republic Commando books. It's not a reference of Republic Commando because Kosai didn't first appear there, but just to note that.
Interesting, yeah. And yeah, so while that is happening, then also something else happens. Palpatine decided to pay a visit to Dathomir, and a Dathomir woman gives him a Sabrak infant that was only known as Maul.
Her name is not revealed here, but according to what I know, her name is Kaisina. Now, why this reveal is horrendous is this. Now, originally, this wasn't... Maul's origin gets retconned twice, because we have to count in Son of Dathomir, unfortunately.
Oh, God.
It's part of the EU continuity for some godforsaken reason. So, what was it, General? Palpatine found a random Iridonian kid in Iridonia? Was that the original origin?
In the
originally
yes.
Palpatine just found him on Iridonia. He was just an orphan kid who he took in to be his apprentice.
Yeah.
That's version 1. Version 2 is... Yeah, version 2. I can't believe I'm even saying these words. Version 2 is apparently Maul, Savage Press, and there was this one other brother. I forgot his name.
No idea. He was one in TCW.
Yeah, which Kaisina didn't want his brother to be the slave of the Night Sisters. Instead, gives the young Maul to Sidious, in servitude because he thought it would be a better life. Was it a better life? We don't know, but maybe I guess. Now here comes to version 3, which is even more horrendous than this version. Version 3, Mother Talzin is revealed to be the mother of Darth Maul. There is no Kaisina.
Oh god.
So,
I mean, you could put those last two together. She claims to be his mother, but his real mother actually being Talzin, so it still fits, but having the Dathomir stuff in here is, quite frankly, really distracting, dumb, and it shouldn't have been in the book.
The Night Sisters don't really have a purpose in this book. They're just there for the sake of continuity. Which I could appreciate that aspect, but it doesn't serve anything for the plot.
Well, I mean, the weird thing is, it's a section, and if you remove that section, nothing about the book... Wait, does it even correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't even explain why he's even on Dathomir, right?
Well, kind of, actually. Apparently, Palpatine had an urge to know more about the dark side because Plagueis was teaching him entirely.
Yeah, now I remember. But still, though, out of all the places to go to, why Dathomir?
I mean, Dathomir. The planet where... What was it? The Dathomir is originally a planet with prisoners from Republic landing there, right?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
So, it seems weird for whatever reason Palpatine decides to come to that planet for some reason. I mean, you could go to Droman Kaz or Korriban.
Well,
or hell, Yavin 4, because, that's where Exar Kun's lingering spirit was.
Yeah, but all three of us know why. Because apparently, because of TCW's version of Dathomir being a weird, foggy realm filled with the dark side, that's why. That's the real reason.
And
books like this really just serve to prove why you can't put the two, that being the EU and TCW, together, because it just does not work. Even when they try, it just does not work.
And what was it? There was this interesting section where Palpatine's like, "Oh, hey, Master Plagueis, what are all these past Sith lords? I want to know more about it. All these holocrons and books." And Plagueis is like, "We're Sith lords. Do you want to become a freaking academic?" Yeah, that's...
We do have an interesting point where Palpatine asks, "Oh, will I get all deformed and stuff?" And then Plagueis goes through the whole, "You could, look all scarred and aged, yellow eyes, and all that."
What was it? Plagueis is basically saying, like, the dark side is a disease. No one wants to be cured up.
Yes.
Could say that, yeah. So there's that indeed. Moving on from all that, in this particular Dathomir section, then there's one point in this book that definitely changes Plagueis' life. That being that, well, Plagueis was attacked during an Order of the Canted Circle ceremony for his assistant Lars Hill, and they were attacked by Maladian assassins. So the assassins, they pretty much managed to kill all of them except Plagueis. Plagueis was only severely wounded and was able to kill all of the assassins before Palpatine and Sate bestaged. They arrived to assist Plagueis.
Is this after Biter Kim's assassination or before?
After. Yeah, after.
Should we get into Biter Kim or?
Biter Kim. Well, let's just say he was just Palpatine and Plagueis. They saw Biter Kim as a liability, and they just wanted to kill him, and they killed him.
And not to mention, the whole reason why Plagueis wanted Sidious to get close to him was because he had a son in the Jedi Order. So get close to the father, you can eventually get close to the son, which he does.
I mean, the thing about Ronald Kim and Biter Kim relationship with Palpatine is like, Ronald Kim later appears during the Clone Wars multimedia project. And we can see that Palpatine doesn't even care how long his friendship lasts. If they become expendable, you're terminated. I mean, it's just simple.
Yep.
Relationship only maintains as long as he isn't threatened by his quote-unquote allies, friends, or family, we should say.
Yes. Indeed, yeah. So, so yeah, this attack from the Millennium Assassins definitely made Plagueis be forced to use some sort of respirator as well as some other life support armor and stuff to pretty much survive. And due to that, he pretty much stayed in his own hideout for like the rest of the for the rest of the 2 decades.
Man, we were constantly skipping over like Saipo Diaz and Count Dooku and all. Oh god.
Dooku, Qui-Gon, Sifo Dyas, and I think Joe Castanew
Yeah.
were at Damask Holdings, I think to settle dispute.
Yeah.
And the others break off for lunch while the Jedi and Hugo Damask stay and talk. And through their conversations, we get to see the character traits of all of them. And Hugo Damask starts to lead Sifo Dyas into the location of Camino. He isn't able to get there, but he does plant the seeds in Sifo Dyas's head of the Republic may need an army in the future if things go south.
And Plagueis constantly challenges the Jedi and saying like, because Qui-Gon is like, you're the reason why certain factions in the galaxy are poor and they're in this unfortunate state. And Qui-Gon and Plagueis is like, oh, so I mean, every progress has consequences, but to call the end result ruination is like overstating. Well, it's something like that. And like they're constantly talking over galactic politics, and Plagueis is constantly, putting doubts to Sifo Dyas, which, Sifo Dyas will serve his purpose in the future because he does survive this book.
Yeah.
I mean, is that even a spoiler? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. So there's that. But yeah, so basically a good chunk of setting up for the events of the prequels happened here from besides the Clone Army for episode 2. Also, Padme getting elected because apparently Plagueis pretty much killed King Ars Baruna of Naboo. He killed him.
That part is like Jabba the Hutt is like, that's interesting. How did Jabba know that Baruna tried to kill Plagueis? I forgot. Because he was informed by Jabba the Hutt that the Naboo's king might kill him.
And that's basically one of the attacks that Plagueis received in his home because the king apparently personally visited with a big ship. Decided to visit.
That's a separate attack.
Oh,
the one I'm talking about is where he tried to kill Plagueis while he was in the ship. Now, speaking of the Maladians, those assassins, right?
Yeah.
After getting injured, Plagueis is like, after Palpatine seeing Plagueis is like, Master must be weaker than it's before. And Plagueis is like, no. Like, do you think Malik was weakened by Revan's lightsaber on the reference?
No idea.
Then it's saying something. You guys know the reason why Malik is wearing the mask of this, right?
Well, I don't know the exact details. I just know that
his jaw.
Yeah, his jaw is completely mutilated.
Gone.
Which is a similar circumstances for Plagueis.
Yeah.
As he referenced the incidents.
Indeed. So there is that, and so we were talking about how Plagueis apparently killed the king. So the way that he killed him is interesting because rather than the typical force abilities, force choking or lightning, all the force abilities we've seen Sith do to kill their enemies or their targets, Plagueis did something interesting. He instead manipulated the king's midichlorians inside him and made them so that they self-destruct by themselves in some way and pretty much killed his ass. Which that's interesting. I don't know any other Sith that have killed their targets like that as far as I know.
Mm.
So Yeah, it was an interesting display of how literally you can manipulate midichlorians into killing themselves, therefore killing the host. So
This was the point where, the trade zones, the taxing, all this stuff was happening, right? At this point.
yes, because this is now 32 BBY.
I mean, 32?
34 to 32 BBY.
34 to 32 BBY. And Palpatine is now sending Maul's missions to, what was it? He sends various missions, which is basically referencing every pre-episode 1 Darth Maul story, other than Lockdown, because it didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
One of them was killing the Black Sun Vigo. The other was, who was that? Neimoidian, who ran away with the information.
The name of the Neimoidian. I know who you're talking to, but I don't know what is the name.
Essentially, that's the plot of Shadowhunter.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Half Munchar.
Yeah, so Half Munchar ran away like a bitch with the information, tried to sell it to the highest bidder, I guess. And then the Neimoidian's like, Sidious is asking the Neimoidians, like, hey, where's that other guy? And the Neimoidians are afraid, so like, Lord Sidious, he was currently sick because he ate too much rich food. And Sidious is like, yeah, right. Tell that to someone who actually believes it.
Boy. Yeah, but that's Shadowhunter, so we're not gonna get into detail with that. Basically, the events of multiple pre-episode 1 tie-in media are referenced here, as well as a few other things. But yep, so that's what's referenced in the third part of the book, the third half. So there's that.
Yeah, the third half is essentially just a run-through of everything that happened pre-episode 1.
And here comes
episode 1.
And here comes one of my few problems with this book, is the treatment of the character Maul. He isn't really a character in this book. He serves no other purpose other than the link between various EU sources. I mean, he could serve new information we haven't seen in any other EU books, but James Luceno decided to just use him as a EU connection.
Well, I mean, to be fair, one, he has to be there, and secondly, it's Darth Maul. By the time we get to this book, we already know everything there is. Well, we know everything that there is to know about him. Until we got at least more from TCW, Maul, there wasn't much to him. Like, everything you need to know about him is pretty much what we saw in episode 1, and then some of the added bits of backstory. But like I said, there's not much to it. He's just Sidious's dog, essentially.
It's just his killer.
And starting from part 2, which is 54 to 52 BBI, was it?
You could say.
Yeah.
I mean, this book calls itself Darth Plagueis, but at some point I'm confused because Palpatine seems to have a bigger presence than the title character himself, which I don't know why Luceno decided to do that. I mean, Palpatine's history is interesting and all, but he shouldn't be the main character, in my opinion.
Well, he became the major player halfway to the book. Plagueis was the main player at first. Then Palpatine was starting to take over.
Yeah, Plagueis, I mean, the thing about this book is that while Plagueis isn't the focal point for the entire book, he is the one that sets everything into motion. And he's also still doing shit behind the scenes throughout the middle and third act. But also the thing is, this book is meant to show us the transition of when Plagueis became the next Sith Lord to when Palpatine usurped him. We find out everything we need to know about Plagueis, from his childhood, adult life, his business, all the way to his death. So we get his entire life story here. So the title of the book still holds true.
Speaking of Plagueis' entire life, all the way to his death, I think that's the next thing that we should talk. His death. Because here's the thing. So right as everyone else in the Star Wars galaxy, or like right as the main focus in the events of 32BY is in the Battle of Naboo. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fighting Darth Maul and Queen Amidala trying to take over Naboo from the Trade Federation. Well, all that is happening. Palpatine and Plagueis are somewhere in Coruscant chatting together, and that's where Palpatine decides to pretty much kill the shit out of him. Like, I like it that those are happening at the same time. Like, holy shit.
I mean, before
with
that,
this book, we found out that Plagueis survived through episode 1.
There's like this interesting part in the book where Plagueis actually goes to the Senate, near the Senate, and meets Cypodius again. And this is the point where, and he finally tells about Camino, and he tries to convince Cypodius to make the clone army because it's more convenient that way, because they'll make a Jedi. I mean, regardless of whether Cypodius will actually help Plagueis, it doesn't really matter because they're gonna modify the
clone army
records. So he'll be the one commissioning the army, but we can see that even the Jedi are having doubts about the Republic and its current state. It's not just the normal citizens.
It should also be noted, and it's kind of a side note, but Plagueis' plan for Sidious in this book was to have Sidious eventually become the Supreme Chancellor. And when he, becomes the Supreme Chancellor, he would name Hugo Damask as co-chancellor, because he thought that, they would, quote-unquote, rule together, but in reality, Plagueis would still be the, true Lord of the Sith. But, of course, that doesn't work out in the end.
Because Palpatine has no intention of sharing his power with anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and something else this book does, going off of that point, the reason why Plagueis sees Palpatine as the one to become Supreme Chancellor, because humans are just... it'd be far easier for a human to become Supreme Chancellor than it would be a non-human.
Yeah. A thing about how Plagueis views a human to be the only species who could be equal to a mutant is because when looking at the galaxy, you can see, humans are participating in all types of, jobs. If you see mutants, they're mostly lawyers or bankers or bits. They are either music players or scientists. But humans, you can find them as starship pilots, a politician, or a soldier. The book only says that there are mutant senators, but they'll only become senator as long as it is the benefit for the greater mutant kind or something.
Yeah, mutants will do the jobs that are viewed as important, while humans will essentially do any job. They can be politicians or they can be scavengers.
And Plagueis even wonders how the hell there's so many humans, which seems more like an excuse to explain why the hell there's so many humans in Star Wars. He
also makes a note that humans don't really have a home world. They've pretty much just spread themselves across the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, at this point in the Republic, humans are generally think they're superior to other species and they hate everyone else.
Yeah.
Which reminds you of real life, where individual countries don't like foreigners or different races.
Or in some ways, it also reminds you of the Empire, because they hated aliens, and they only wanted just humans ruling the galaxy.
Which seems
of course, that's just meant to explain why we didn't see a lot of aliens, because, special effects limitations and all of that.
This aligns similar to what Dooku actually says. I don't know if this is a reference, but Dooku in the Revenge of the Sith novelization says he intentionally put aliens in the charge of the Separatist Council. So when the Separatists lose, he's gonna completely move away from them and blame them. So, because Dooku wanted a human-centric empire,
Interesting.
It is certainly interesting how the galaxy is set up in that with these big organizations, like Trade Federation, the Banking Clan, they're all run by non-human species.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, there's like when Palpatine was like asking, what was it the Iriado Trade Summit? Was it where the droids quote unquote malfunctioned and killed all the directorates of the Trade Federation?
Huh. That's something.
The droids malfunction. And now, what do you think Newt Gunray would do after he becomes the highest position of the Trade Federation? Of course, put all of the important people as Nemodians, because why not?
Yep.
That's something. Indeed. So there is another part of the book that I want to mention regards to the third half, and it's that you guys know the part in episode 1 where Qui-Gon was talking to Anakin about midichlorians. Fun fact: Plagueis was actually spying them through the usage of macro binoculars and reached out with the Force, only to fall victim to several perplexing images: ferocious battles in deep space, the clashing of lightsabers, partitions of radiant light, and even a black helmeted cyborg rising from a table. Yeah, Darth Plagueis, he got a glimpse of the future of Anakin Skywalker.
That's a good segue into we find out, or at the very least, it's theorized why and how the Force created Anakin in this book.
Yeah.
The Force created Anakin, or at least it's theorized by Plagueis that the Force created Anakin as a result of his experiments with midichlorians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
In the end, Plagueis doomed the Sith by doing all of these experiments. Like, when Plagueis noticed Anakin, it's like, oh shit, I gotta deal with this kid or war finished.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, too late for that.
Way too late for that, because Palpatine decided to kill the shit out of Plagueis. So, and any knowledge Plagueis had, was kept to himself. While Palpatine, he didn't get
there's like a
knowledge.
scene in where Plagueis visits the Naboo chamber and say, "Where's the boy, Anakin?" And it's like, Anakin's like, "Oh my God, this kid! Where is he? I gotta find him!" And then there's like, he's being tested by the Jedi Council. Plagueis, no, that's the point. It's the point of no return. They're already finished.
That's glorious. Yeah. Indeed. Who would have
Of course, what is ironic is Palpatine actually tried to train Anakin.
Yeah, Palpatine had the opposite idea to Plagueis. Plagueis wanted Anakin dead, but Palpatine wanted the opposite. He wanted to take Anakin and turn him into his own Sith apprentice, or at least Sith pawn.
Yeah, which killing would be a better choice, but story doesn't work that way.
Palpatine's ego got the best of him, and he wanted the Chosen One as his own puppet to control.
Just goes to show you, Sith, or the Sith way of thinking, just doomed to failure.
Makes you wonder
why it was never going to work, no matter how much faith Bane had in his rule of 2.
It only makes you wonder why the Sith continue to try to take over the galaxy when they fail so many times.
Do you think
it's just craving power. They crave power, take over the galaxy.
Do you think Khan's order might have lasted longer if they didn't get destroyed by Bane?
I don't think so, because the reason why they got destroyed, besides Bane, pretty much, actually, Bane accelerated their demise. It's just that Khan's order was going to be destroyed because they were not really Sith. They were more like they were sharing the power of the dark side and considering themselves as some sort of a team of sorts. And there was no very strong Sith that could truly lead the Sith. And so therefore, their death was inevitable. It's just that Bane massively accelerated that.
Yes, no matter what, any dark side user, even if they reach peak power, they're doomed to failure, because that's just the nature of the dark side. No matter what you do, it'll never be enough. You'll always crave more power. And as we see here, Plagueis leaves his master to die, even though there is still stuff to learn. Palpatine kills Plagueis before he can really reach his full potential, missing out on God knows what kind of information that could have helped in securing his power that much more.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, every Sith cannot last. They all get destroyed at the end. Just look at Malik, Revan. Malik wanted more power. It didn't end well for him. Well, Exar Kun. Or not getting to Exar Kun because the bastard returns in ghost form. Die already, seriously.
well, there's that. So yeah, makes you wonder regarding the Sith. So yeah.
The Sith philosophy itself inherently is destructive. No matter how you try to fix it, it doesn't work.
Exactly.
Because the core component is people constantly trying to backstab each other.
Exactly. So, indeed. So yeah. Anyway, any other parts of the book, guys, that you wanna talk about before we go to the next section?
Oh, the ending of the book is very impressive. Like, we will continue to watch your career with great interest. And the book is like, while his mother suffered as a slave in Tatooine, where he is helpless to do anything. Like, Palpatine understands how Anakin thinks and how his mental state is, while the Jedi thinks, oh, they could do something out of him, or
well,
I don't know.
Turn him to Jedi, a damn good one, but that's all. So yeah, indeed. So anyway, anything else?
Nah.
No.
Okay, well, now we're going to the next section of this book, which is, more like the next section of this podcast, which is basically the EU connections with Darth Plagueis the book, and oh boy, there's plenty.
Yeah, there are a Sith ton.
So
okay,
yeah.
so what was it? Dark Rabbit, was it? One of the obscure Siths that are mentioned in this book is actually from one of the Jedi. No, was it Coruscant Knights book? I forget which one it was, but yeah.
There's that. Now I say let's go. Let's deal with the major references, the ones that are obvious for you fans. Okay, the entirety of the pre-episode 1 tie-in media from the third half of the book. That's obviously it's basically Jedi
War, Cloak of Deception, Shadowhunter,
Maul,
Darth Maul comic. So there's that. There's also there's even some mentions to even Star Wars Bounty Hunter, actually, because the Band of Gora is mentioned at one point.
Komari Bosa herself is even referenced.
Yeah, that too. So there's another one, and then there's even some references to, though these ones are a bit more minor, references to the Tron trilogy, Tales of the Jedi, and even a few others.
The events of the Bane trilogy.
Yeah.
And there's even some really, really obscure but kind of important. The Sun Guards are actually a reference of the Phantom Menace video game.
You're talking about the PS1 game?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The Sun Guards do appear a lot.
That's something.
In the book.
Yeah.
And
Nihilus and Scion are referenced in the fact that they were what happened to their bodies due to the dark side.
And what was it? It also references the Zabolka. Now, if you guys don't know what the Zabolka is, it's basically a Iridonian double-bladed weapon. I don't even know what James Luceno was doing when he was writing this book. Like, did he play the video games? How does he know this?
Well, I mean, this book is an amalgamation of EU sources, so it would not be surprising that he did a lot of research.
I would love to have a Q&A with him, or love to watch a Q&A with him. Jesus Christ.
Or maybe get some sort of interview of him, similar to how we did with Stackpole.
Because it's with this in particular, very similar to what Death Star did, in that it just takes so much stuff and just crams it into one story. And you gotta wonder, how the fuck does one person manage that? Because I mean,
And,
there is
yeah.
because it's not even just as simple as, oh yeah, Darth Bane and the events of the Bane trilogy happen. No, just throwing names around a lot. Like they go through a ton of Sith Lords here.
Mm-hmm.
And, random locations, weapons, planets. Like, I mean, what was it? At some point, there was like a character called Carrot Sante mentioned. Just look for this source called Mission to Liana, which is like a West End RPG book.
Yeah, indeed. So there's that. Also, there's other sections, no other EU references. These ones are more smaller ones, but noteworthy ones. So when Plagueis is like in his library, some part in the book, apparently the book mentions all sorts of like references, like name drops of either species or cultures or organizations from several EU sources. Like it contains the ancient histories of the Rakata, nice the Republic One, Bijun, from Jedi Academy, as well as other Star Wars sources like the Dark Empire, because Bijun was there. The text devoted to the followers of Palawa, which actually is from the Shadows of the Empire source book. The Shadows Academy, no source in that one. The Order of Dai Bendu from Star Wars Episode 1, Racer. Yes, the N64 and PC.
Racer?
Yes, Racer.
Oh, and this thing. So there was like a random references in the book where it says it tries to connect one of the story where it reveals like Qui-Gon and Dooku was successful in preventing one of the assassination where Plagueis and Tenebrous tried to replace a senator with a younger one, which is a reference to Legacy of the Jedi, a children's book.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
And there's a couple references of the Jedi Apprentice books. And it makes me think, what kind of process does James Luceno take when he writes a single novel? Like, how does he write these things?
Oh, and also Emperor Vitiate from SWOTOR is referenced in that
yeah.
he was one of the few Sith Lords who was able to prolong his life for an extended period of time. And this book was released in 2012, a year after SWOTOR
and Dark
came
Empire.
Out, so, yeah.
Wait, wasn't SWOTOR December?
Well,
it's sometime in 2011, so
there was already some tie-in media released for SWOTOR in early 2011, so there was plenty that Luceno could still take. By the way, there's more references. Archives that once belonged to the House Malriox, which is from Yoda Dark Runderbull. The Annals of the Sorcerers of Tune and of Queen Amanoa of Onderon, Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi, yeah.
Biological Studies of the Ysalamiri Borskers of Miker, Tron Trilogy, and the Taosin of Vart from Darth Maul Shadowhunter. It was that big creature.
And the Light Merge building, which you guys not remember the Light Merge building?
No.
The Light Merge building is basically the secret hideout we see in Episode 2, I guess, where Qui-Gon and Dooku and Sidious meets, which is
I know which one.
The name directly comes from Labyrinth of Evil.
I know which one you're talking about. It's called the zone. That place is called the Works. I know the name because I remember it being mentioned in some specific sources like Labyrinth of Evil. So that's why it sounds familiar to me. But
and Jango Fett Open Seasons.
Oh yeah, that's also referenced here.
Because it said that the Death Watch are currently dealing with stuff, so that's why they weren't hired.
And Dooku and his Jedi were patched, sent to deal with Mandalorians, which in reality they were innocent.
Yeah. So the Battle of Galadron. So yeah, there's that reference as well. Obviously, as we know, Labyrinth of Evil also, because there's some elements that were first established there are here in this book, from Maikito to Canton Moria to, of course, Plagueis himself, because Plagueis was first mentioned in Labyrinth of Evil. So that's another reference.
And Tenebrous Way, I guess, because the scene from the first chapter where Tenebrous dies is from Tenebrous Way. But I don't know if that's referencing Plagueis because it was a tie-in.
Yeah, I would say no, because it would just be a tie-in.
I see. The one that would be a reference would be Maul Lockdown, because that book was basically meant to to be a tie-in to, well, not tie-in, but more like connect
sequel.
to. You could say that.
In between Maul lockdown, I assume, happens between the chapters of Darth Plagueis. It's after Cloak of Deception, but sometime before Shadowhunter.
Yeah. So yeah, it would count as one for as a reference. So yeah.
And Dark Empire, obviously.
Oh yeah, obviously. Essence transfer.
And clone. You know, Plagueis had no intention of putting something in a clone body. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah.
What else do you think of?
Well, there's a lot of references, references in this book. Obviously, it doesn't beat an entire multimedia project like Shadows of the Empire, but...
Oh, speaking of that, I remember. So it says something like before the Clone Wars, Munilus was known for something, which I assume this is a reference to the micro series.
Interesting. Explain.
Because it mentions that. I mean, let's be honest. What other media do you see a Clone Wars battle in Munilus, except for the micro series? It's an obvious reference.
There is that, yeah. Any other references?
Let's see.
Besides the several, they're probably somewhere there.
I remember reading a story called Evil Never Dies, the Sith Dynasty, which references Dark Millennial, which is a meme of his meme at this point for some reason.
There's that, yeah. So, apparently, well, guess what? Apparently Prince Shizor is mentioned here in some way.
Oh, yeah. The interesting thing about this book is it accidentally spells Caesar with Xixor.
A typo.
And there's also a random criminal that appeared in Star Wars Droids that get a reference.
Oh, well, damn, I didn't expect this one. So apparently this book also has references to Legacy of the Force. Now, how is that freaking possible? Because apparently...
Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, exactly. That Sith Lord is mentioned in Darth Plagueis.
And I would say, technically, Legacy of Star Wars Legacy, because that's the one dealing with Darth Undeadu and all that.
Yeah, definitely. So... Yeah, there's plenty. Obviously, we already mentioned SWTOR, so yeah, definitely SWTOR references. There's several here.
What about the Darth Maul short stories? Like, was it Endgame, Restraint, or what about the Wrath of Darth Maul?
Well,
know those stories?
Wrath of Darth Maul came after, so I don't know if that.
Really?
Well, let me check. So the Wrath of the Maul came out in January 1, 2012. Oh, actually, no, it came before.
The book directly thanks James Luceno for the information in Darth Plagueis. So.
I see.
Is that referencing? It's confusing.
I don't know. But I think there is one thing we're gonna mention regarding EU references. We already talked about it in the previous section of this podcast, but I think we should add a bit to it. So, regards to that Dathomir section in Darth Plagueis,
holy shit.
Yeah, basically, well, as we discussed before, it basically retcons the origin of Darth Maul, which, here's the thing, if TCW had not done that, this book could have actually just referenced the actual origins of Maul, you know, that he was found in Iridonia, in the streets of Iridonia by Darth Sidious, and taken to become his apprentice, and also we wouldn't be getting the Darth Plagueis saying that, oh, Maul's a Dathomir in Sabrak, you know, that shit.
No, this is version 2. This is retcon again. Because, let's be honest, we gotta admit that Son of Dathomir exists.
Yeah, so yeah, in regards to EU connections, well, TCW unfortunately is connected here, but it's done in a horrible way.
Speaking of TCW, I finally remember 2 more connections. As I previously mentioned, Jedi Trial with a separatist commander with the name Tonnet.
Yeah.
And TCW Wild Space. DCW Wild Space is the book where it says like Palpatine used to race when he was a teenager or something.
Well, that's something.
Which is referenced in this book.
Indeed. Though as all three of us know, TCW references in the EU is not a good thing, but that's a topic for another video.
Oh, it's a
just
TCW
leads to
tie-in.
headaches and suicides.
Yeah. So there's that indeed. So yeah. Anyway, any other EU mentions to discuss here?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, in that case, I guess now we get into the conclusion of this podcast. So, who wants to go first?
So, Darth Plagueis is arguably the best EU story ever. Now, as someone who's a very lore-heavy guy, there's a story that just like really focuses on the lore and connecting to like as many things as possible, then of course I'm gonna like it. But also gets stuff with Sith philosophy, learning more about the midichlorians. This book is just fantastic. If there was one book that I would point people towards, if they like really, really want to get into the EU, this would be it. Because it has so many connections, it's a good jumping off point. If something piques your interest, like, oh, this Darth Bane guy is cool. Boom, go to the Bane trilogy.
Mm-hmm. And vice versa also helps, because if you already read all the sources, reading Darth Plagueis will basically make you like know very well from where those came from, and it only further reinforces the continuity.
It further emphasizes just how strong of a continuity the EU was.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Anything else?
Not from me.
Okay.
I'll go next.
Mm-hmm.
Darth Plagueis is the ultimate amalgamation of what a Star Wars story is. It combines almost every aspect of the story, like a comic, a novel, a video game, an RPG book, a goddamn child storybook you forgot that was released in the 1980s. Most of them, many things you never even consider are referenced in this book. And I don't even know the mentality James Luceno was having when he was writing this book. I mean, it is cool. This book is especially cool when you know what he's referencing. It's like getting rewarded for the stuff. I mean, some of these references might be weird, or some people might be scratching their heads because they didn't read it, but for some people like us, who actually read these stuffs, they're actually interesting because we know more context. And based on those contexts, the story is building up. For example, and you don't actually need to read all those sources, to be honest. For example, Cloak of Deception is a good example. I mean, it's interesting if you want to read it, but Darth Plagueis is so well written, the book's existence becomes kind of meaningless. Because
not
well, I mean, to
Darth
get the
Plagueis
full story, you would read those books.
I mean, the Darth Plagueis novel does a better job on pre-episode 1 world building than the Cloak of Deception itself. So yeah. So my main point is, you don't need to know or read all of these things to understand the story, but it's more meaningful if you know what James Luceno is referencing.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Anything else?
Nah.
Okay. Now, as for me, well, this book was a great read when I first read it back in my trip in Las Vegas. Yeah, I actually was reading the book in Las Vegas. And nowadays, it's still a great book to read. It's definitely one of the best Sith-oriented books out there, aside from the Darth Vader trilogy, of course. And I do highly recommend any fan of the expanded universe, or hell, even a fan of just the 6 movies, or that are even remotely curious about Plagueis or even Palpatine. Yeah, read this book. This book is well worth your time. Like, if you see it in a bookstore or something, don't pass out on it. Get it, buy it, read it, and you'll have a damn good time with it. It's an amazing book. So
quality reading.
Yes, indeed. So, yeah. So, that's all I gotta say. Great book. And, well, that's the end for this podcast. Now, next podcast will definitely be what you guys have been waiting for. Probably will take a week or two, considering how how that work on defending the prequels definitely is not one of the easier ones. Definitely time consuming, but don't worry, will be worth it. So meanwhile, we did this podcast to hold you guys out on it. So that's it for this one. See you guys on the next Star Wars video. Bye bye.
Sayonara.